The wish list. Item 7. That night, 2 images kept coming to Alfie every time he closed his eyes. One was the roof of the warehouse, a great shining field stretching away from him as far as he could see, glittering with moonlight. The other was the canyons of the warehouse shelves, lit from below in flashing red and green by silent robots. But there was one phrase that stuck in his head that had nothing to do with either of them. There were 3 of them, the old man had said. 3 people founded it. He had said it in a peculiar tone of voice, as if it had special meaning for him, and that had lodged it in Alfie's brain. There were 3 of them. He couldn't sleep, so he did what anyone would do in that scenario and picked up his phone to shine bright light into his eyes and keep himself awake. It took a lot of digging, back through the critical news pieces about the employment practices of Stocking.Christmas, back through the business supplement profiles of Piers Cramp, back through the breathless tech blogs about their innovations. Eventually he found an old BBC News piece, still in the turn-of-the-millennium HTML, about the new internet startup that was going to disrupt Christmas, estocking.co.uk. There were 3 of them. 3 friends from university. Piers Cramp was there, of course, standing at the front of the photo with bleached hair and a Blur t-shirt. But there were 2 people behind him, a man and a woman. 3 people who were, according to this article, e-stocking. The woman was Faye Spencer, the operations manager, according to the article. COO, Alfie guessed. He got the distinct sense, reading between the lines, that Faye was the one who did all the work that Piers thought was beneath him, i.e. everything. The other man, hunched up in a hoodie, wearing wraparound sunglasses that hid his eyes, was Nick Close, the programmer, apparently. The person, then, who had written that original wish list code that still lay at the heart of so many of Stocking.Christmas's operations. Close was clean-shaven, his hair cut anonymously short, a good deal of his face hidden by shades, and yet something about his nose was familiar, the wry set of the lips, his slightly hunched stance. Take away some hair and the sunglasses, add a greying beard. It could be. What had happened to these other 2 then? The 2 people who had been meticulously airbrushed out of Cramp's legend like purged Soviet apparatchiks. Faye Spencer was easy to find. She was still everywhere, churning social feeds on all the platforms, including a series of videos reviewing, scathingly, Stocking.Christmas's own brand of beauty goods. That appeared to be her thing. Organic, natural, mysteriously healthy beauty products, all dusted about with notions like wellness and wholeness like glitter in blusher. Her entire social media presence was devoted to shilling these goods. Her meditation tutorial included a little plug for her scented candles, her evening routine featured her cleanser prominently, her lukewarm reviews of Stocking.Christmas moisturizer took a happier turn at the end, as she recommended her own instead. It took slightly longer to figure out how she had got there. She had been a darling of the industry for a while, a lone woman in crowded photos of badly dressed men at technology and business conferences. She had an ill-defined role supposedly encouraging women in STEM in the noughties, a short-lived TV series on technology startups, and had finally launched the Wellness Platform for Women website, which was what she was peddling in all her posts. Finally, in an old article, Alfie found it. The revelation that e-stocking had been Faye's idea in the first place. So that was why the man in the warehouse had made that face when Alfie had attributed it to Piers. The piece went on to suggest that it was an argument about precisely that credit that had led to Faye being squeezed out of what would eventually become Stocking.Christmas. This was the journalist's supposition, though. Faye never seemed to talk about Stocking.Christmas at all. Nick Close was harder to find. Just a few articles about e-stocking and its development, but then nothing. By the time e-stocking was becoming Stocking.Christmas, Nick Close had completely disappeared from all coverage. Well, he was a programmer after all. Perhaps he was simply camera shy. adverse to publicity, still hunkered down over a screen down in some basement somewhere in the bowels of a Stocking.Christmas office, or up in the roof of a Stocking.Christmas warehouse. And then, in the small hours of the morning, when all outside was quiet, apart from, somewhere distant, a screeching fox, Alfie stumbled across the website of Daniel Close. Daniel was Nick's younger brother, and he had some very firm ideas about what had happened to Nick Close. Firm in the sense of fixed, but not firm in the sense of solid. In fact, Daniel's theories seemed very wobbly indeed, quite hard to get a handle on. There was definitely a mention of people trafficking, but then there was an implication that it might not be people doing the trafficking. Alfie wasn't sure whether these not people were ancient lizards descended from dinosaurs, or extraterrestrials, or actually reptilian aliens who had colonized antediluvian Earth. But perhaps these were all complicated and esoteric metaphors, code words intended to hide Daniel's real meaning. He certainly seemed deeply suspicious of surveillance, worried about mobile phone masts and CCTV cameras and browser cookies from Stocking.Christmas in particular. This was how Alfie had ended up there. Daniel Close's very specific animus for Stocking.Christmas, and why he hated it so much. He hated it because he blamed it for the disappearance of his brother Nick. Quite what they might have done with Nick Close, and why, was not clear. Indeed, this was largely what Daniel was trying to establish as he shifted through every conspiracy theory Alfie had ever heard of, and quite a few that Alfie suspected he had created for himself. But all of it was in the cause of finding his brother. And one of the things that Daniel had done to help him do this was have a mock-up made of what Nick Close might look like now. He claimed he had had a specialist do it, using photographs of their own father and grandfather and of Daniel now. But all it looked like to Alfie was that someone had photoshopped a bald patch and a beard onto an old picture of Nick. Nevertheless, there he was, white-bearded, balding, a careful, judgmental look in his eye, the man from the warehouse. So that's who he was, Alfie's mysterious friend, Nick Close, one of the founders of Stocking.Christmas and the original creator of its code. The man who had laid the foundations of this global e-commerce empire, now living in its attic. The man hiding in the shadows, while his old business partner hogged the media spotlight. It certainly explained why he was able to hack into the back end of the website and take control. He had written its original code, and now he could live off it, scavenging inside the carcass of the monster he had helped to create. Well, thought Alfie, what was one thing he couldn't order through Stocking.Christmas? What was the one thing he'd never find in that labyrinth of shelves? Family.